Good morning and welcome to this week's Midweek Psalm Meditation. I think I say that different every week. Today we're looking at Psalm number 30. The psalmist writes, I praise you, O Eternal One. You have lifted me out of that deep, dark pit and denied my opponents the pleasure of rubbing in their success. The Hebrew term for this kind of poem is a todah, T-O-D-A-H, a song that confesses how God has acted to deliver. In poetic form, it tells a story of thanksgiving, narrating the divine action that deliverance has brought forth, resulting in praise. David is remembering the greatness of God at a great event, supposedly the dedication of the temple, but the temple hadn't been built yet. So it may have been penned upon the occasion of dedicating his house of cedar, or it may have been that David wrote this, then it was read and used at the dedication of the temple, and the inscription added later. We don't know. But it does tell of great deliverance by God that results in praise. When you think of danger, what do you think of? When you think of destruction, what do you think of? When you think of a pit, what do you see? In the Psalms, dangers, destructions, even death itself is seen as a pit, a large hole in the ground used to catch wild animals or collect drinking water, as in a cistern. Sometimes they were used as dungeons and prisons. In the New Testament, Jesus said the blind might fall into them. Very often, pit is used figuratively when enemies seek to harm someone by digging a pit for them. Sheol, or death, was often referred to as the pit. Since God did not reveal the hope of resurrection until late in Old Testament times, pit has a negative connotation. Everyone dies. No one avoids the pit. Now, we don't know if David faced death or if his enemies had just dug a big pit for him to fall into, trying to take him down. We don't know the exact circumstances. But David gave God credit for delivering him from that pit, either not falling into it in the first place or being lifted up from it in the second place. And he praised God for snatching him out of the pit and the danger of death. God had drawn him up, healed him, and restored life to him. If you know God did that, the only thing we can do is break out in song and praise, and that's what David did. And he invited all of Israel to praise God with him. When did we last share what God has done and break out in thanksgiving and praise? The psalm tells a story of the crisis, the prayer, and deliverance. When was the last time you shared your story of crisis, prayer, and deliverance? As a way to encourage someone else, as a way to break out in praise and thanksgiving to God. How do you tell your story of God rescuing you? I remember 17, 18 years old, driving my car home late at night, and there was a steep hill before you made the turn onto our particular road. And the brakes went out on the car. I had no brakes to stop to make that turn. I let my foot off the gas and I coasted all the way down 250 so yards later so I could turn around in the housing development carefully. I remember a time when I took a bend a little bit too fast and slid off into the ditch. It felt like a hand actually laid itself upon the hood top of the car, keeping it on the ground instead of flying off into the woods. Do you share your stories of God's rescue and you're giving praise in return? David is hopeful. Hope lies behind David's prayer, request, remembrances, and praise. He hopes to live and praise God for a long time yet to come, knowing that he can't praise God when he is in the pit of Sheol. But when he is delivered, his grief changes to dancing, and the customary sackcloth attire gives way to joy. It is dismaying to think that we can live and die without God. We are simply not designed or equipped to deal with death or eternity without God. Find hope and joy and peace with God in your life. Search your life experiences for those times when God acted. Maybe in the past you weren't able to attribute it to God. You weren't able to see how God was a part of that situation. Look back over those situations, though, and see God at work. And break out in praise and thanksgiving.